Good morning and welcome to this morning's Small Business University. My name is Kelly Leonard. I'm the CEO of Taylor Leonard Corporation, and I am pleased to be your host this morning. I'd like to start off by thanking our sponsor, title sponsor, Mid-Atlantic Federal Credit Union, for supporting these amazing monthly events. I have the pleasure this morning of introducing you to at-large County Councilmember Hans Riemer, and Hans may not remember it, but he and I met, actually my husband and I met Hans a few years ago at a community service project, and it really impressed upon us his love for community, his love for Montgomery County, his love for education, and just his constituents. And so I'm excited to have him with us here this morning to share his thoughts on building our innovation economy. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Councilmember Hans Riemer.
Thank you. So much. All right. Well, I'm really glad to be here this morning, and it's nice to see such a vibrant room of constituents. And I wish I had time to learn more about the individual, pursuits that you're involved in, and your companies, your roles, and perhaps when we speak, if we have questions, you can comment a little bit about what brought you here today and things like that. But I am really pleased to be here, and I want to thank the Mid-Atlantic Federal Credit Union and Montgomery Community Media for convening this group. I've noticed just how really strong and robust this monthly gathering has become. I think it's a great sign of the strength of our small business community, and it's something that we need to really nurture here in this county. So I was pleased to be able to come today and talk a bit about some of the issues that I'm working on. I want to just preface my comments by saying a little bit about how I see, and I'd love to, this is an area where I'd really like to know how you see who we are in this county and where we are now and what we could become, what we should become. As you know, the county's history, a lot of farms over the years, hundreds of years of this community as a farming community with small towns and in pockets in the midst. Over the latter half of this century, the last century, we became a bedroom community, largely for government workers centered around our federal research labs and government institutions. We are becoming, I think, a very cosmopolitan community that is right in that, I think we're in a transition to that kind of unique place that has it all, where you have not only your farms and your rural and your leafy neighborhoods and quiet residential streets, and you also have your bustling urban nodes. And your urban areas are different from the classic cities, the great cities of America. We're building a different kind of urban environment that is a fit for who we are and the kind of diverse community that we are. But I see that as our future, where we are the kind of community where, again, as I said, you have it all, and it's the best place to be. It's the best place to live. That's our strength, I think. But in order to achieve that, we have to have that foundation in a job base. We have to have a magnet that brings people here, and the magnets are always jobs. That's why people move typically is for jobs. And so, as this transition is happening from community types, one of the things that has changed is that I think the game is no longer about attracting the really big companies, the Fortune 50 companies. I mean, it's nice if they're in your community and you want to keep the ones that you have, but the future is really about the smaller companies, the younger companies, the new companies. The future is about the growth, supporting the entrepreneurial environment, supporting the founding and the growth of the companies that are in the more entrepreneurial scene. So what you're going to see is my presentation is focusing on some of the things that I think that are beneficial to that basic strategy, supporting new companies, young companies, and what role the county government might have in all of that. Conceptually, one of the things that we are discovering and really trying to focus in on is the concept of innovation districts, which is a concept that Bruce Katz of the Brookings Metropolitan Center has kind of put forward. of places that combine living, playing, working, and where the kind of economic change is happening. The research discoveries, the startups that are driving the economy. So it's not necessarily where the big companies, are sort of quietly continuing their success. It's where the new companies are really changing the dynamics that are all around us, and they're driving the economic progress of our country. And so he's identified this kind of very rich environment, and he's mapped it out, where they are in the country. And I think it's helpful for us to think about, where we might have these, we have them now, or where we should have them in the future, so that we can focus our efforts with infrastructure, zoning and things like that, to imagine them. So we have thought that, for example, the Great Seneca Science Corridor, which is not too far from here on the other side of 270, can become that if we build the right public transportation infrastructure, if we get the right residential, mix into there, if we build the right digital infrastructure, which I'll talk about. The White Oak Science Gateway on the other side of the county, near FDA, we thought that can become such a place if we can get the right public transportation infrastructure, if we can create the right, environment where people want to live. Silver Spring, Bethesda, already, vibrant innovation districts, but we need to think about them in that way and not let them just kind of, keep going on their own momentum, but think about what kind of needs do they have, as they seek to compete over time with places, next to major research universities, for example, around the country, because those are their competitors. So, as I was saying, what does it take to build the innovation economy in the county? I think it starts with being a place that is a great place to live. You can't. There's no substitute for having a high quality of life that appeals to different kinds of people. And so, while we need the urban environment where younger workers want to be, we also need the kind of place where families want to live, and we need the kind of place where older workers want to live. We need to have it all, and again, to our benefit, that is something that our county has. We are building tax incentives and grants in this county to focus on supporting the companies. We're interested to see the executive's proposal for relocation assistance, for companies that are just starting and signing their first lease, to help them with rent, things like that. We are really changing how we approach incubators and accelerators. Finally, in this county, I think it's long overdue. 15, 20 years ago, the county was a leader in the incubator arena. We had a network that, a lot of jurisdictions kind of would have been jealous of, but then I think we really kind of just let that, kind of fell asleep at the wheel. And meanwhile, that environment was reinvented, and now we're trying to reinvent ours as well. And I think we'll end up with something that is even, better and more exciting than anybody has. But we're focusing now our incubators around the sectors of the economy that we really identify as the future of the county, which is a big change. And I'm glad, I've been one of those pushing for us to kind of realign that. Cybersecurity, health IT. These are areas that, continuing, of course, with biotech, but these are areas where, we can look down the road and we see things are coming. I want to just give a shout out to Dan Hoffman, who's here. He's the county's Chief Innovation Officer, and he's founded something that's mentioned there called the Thingstitute, and it's about the Internet of Things, which is, the way that sensory devices can be used, in the consumer market to, create really interesting products and services. And the county is really becoming a pathbreaker. We were successful in a national competition supported by NIST, the National Institute of Science and Standards and Technology here in the county, where we're putting sensors into senior housing and the sensors can identify if the senior in the apartment has fallen or is somehow inactive in a way that might be troubling, and then an alert can go back to fire and rescue, and they can come out. That's the future of technology in the residential environment, and that's what the Internet of Things is all about. And our county is breaking a new ground in that area. It's very exciting. We're working very hard on workforce development now, trying to align, the pathway for our workforce, for our young people to get into the jobs of the future. I think this is really important because, for so many reasons, so that companies here know that, that they can get the workforce that they need. That's a real challenge. But also for social equity reasons. I mean, you see a lot of these industries are not representative of, the full population of our community and of our country. And I think if the county can really, put together very strong programs, we can help change that dynamic. A few things that I'm working on. So one is broadband, the second is open data, and the third is our nighttime economy. Okay, broadband is about networks. And there are probably a few of you who are much more expert in networks than I am, but I'm doing my best here. But so data networks, is how we all get access to the internet. And the speed of those networks, determines how much you can accomplish, with those networks. And this is an area that is changing rapidly. And smart government and private sector, of people will look down the road, in my view, and say, what do we need 5-10 years from now? Let's make sure we have it. So we're not ever playing catch up. We're always ahead of the curve. Well, the county, if you're a resident in the county, you have some pretty decent choices for, your home, your residential kind of FiOS and, Xfinity and things like that. But at the commercial level, I think our success is sort of more mixed. And so one of the things that we're working on is how to bring ultra-high speed internet networks into the county for commercial use and ultimately for residential use as well. When we say ultra-high speed, we mean, your home-based, like I have FiOS at home. I think I have 250 megabit per second speeds. We're talking like 100 gigabit speeds, so really, really fast. And the kind of networks that you can do, like live video, manipulation, and, analysis of very large amounts of data. So the county actually has about 170 miles of fiber that we've put into the ground, which provides broadband. And one of the things that we would like to explore is how that can be, more useful for the private sector. It's another way out to the internet in a very reliable, fast manner. And so we're working on that. We've also thought about how to connect more closely our major institutions. I'm not sure if you can read that, but I've identified some of the big players in the county, like your FDAs and your NESS, your Montgomery College, your Hopkins, our accelerators. And we're trying to figure out how we can more closely link them with super high-speed internet. And then, the big game is, how do you create an entrepreneurial environment where there are companies that are starting up to develop applications and services that rely upon that super high-speed network, and it's connected in with your major institutions. So there could be a group of companies, that would say, we're going to build things that the FDA, to interface with the FDA in health, but we can't do it unless we have the fastest internet speeds available, and, great, it's here, and so we're going to get started on that. That's kind of the vision of that. So there's a program that we're building called Ultra Montgomery, which is about that. The executive branch is taking the lead on that. I kind of described the relationship with the federal labs and the US Ignite. It's a partnership that we're trying to form to think about that. We're putting more fiber into the ground with some of our major infrastructure projects. We're working on building codes so that when a building is constructed, it's amenable to infrastructure that you don't have exclusive agreements where one fiber company is placing all the infrastructure and there's no competition, things like that. And we're trying to get more funding for our digital infrastructure in our libraries, which can also be an important hub. A second area we're working on, and we're seeing some really visible progress here, is open data. Open data is, for governments to get good at open data, they have to revolutionize how they collect data, how they store it, how they manage it, how they publish it, and then ultimately how they use it. And I believe, that the application of big data strategies will ultimately revolutionize government in very positive ways, and that if the government can share its data, useful data, in the right way, it creates opportunities for the private sector to provide valuable services and create companies that provide value to the people. So in 2012, the council passed the law that I authored that is called the Open Data Act of 2012. And it requires every department in the county government to identify what data it has that can become structured data sets and then published and released. And again, Dan Hoffman has worked very, very closely with the technology team to kind of craft this strategy. We're proceeding with that. We have identified over 500 data sets that we're going to release. Just an example of some of the benefits here, from the mundane things like we have thousands and thousands of requests for information about building permits. And I think a lot of companies need that kind of information. They want to know what's going on in the market, so they're always requesting what's going on with building permits. Well, now we're just providing that openly. And so, they don't have to go through kind of a lot of, it's not hard for them to get that information. Food inspection data. We have a whole data set that provides information about restaurants and food inspection issues. A lot of people are using that. It's really interesting. I used it. We're trying to, and I'll get into this a little later, we're trying to make changes at the Department of Liquor Control, and we were trying to figure out who does the Department of Liquor Control buy everything from, and we went on to the county's open data website, and we figured it out because the information was there. So some of the applications that are more popular for open data are your real-time transit information, for example. When you open your iPhone, you want to know when is the next bus coming, when's the next train coming. There are apps for that. The government used to create the apps. They would create the data and then create the app. And what we've realized is we need to stop creating the app for that. We just need to provide the data and let the private sector provide the apps, because the apps are going to continue to evolve. That's kind of a nice illustration of what open data is all about. We have our budget online, by the way. If you haven't seen this, this is one of the greatest applications of open data that I think you'll find out there anywhere at the local government level. We have data. Well, the entire budget is online in a very accessible format, where if you want to know how the county government's spending its money, you can drill down to every last penny. A second area focuses on the quality of life in the county, and I described how we have been kind of a rural and suburban community, and we're evolving to become a rural, suburban, and urban community. But in order to get there, I think we have to plan for that deliberately. And one of the things that we see is that the companies that depend on creative class workers, whether they're younger workers or older workers, that those companies want to be where their workforce is, and their workforce wants to be where they have a good time and fun and a high quality of life. So to bring it all together in an illustration, a friend of mine, MCPS graduate, started a company that focuses on using open data from the legislative processes to provide information to companies that need to know what's happening in government. And his company has successfully raised millions of dollars in venture capital, and they had 20 plus employees in a suite in Bethesda. And then one day I found out that they had moved to DC, and I asked him why, and he said, well, that's where my workers want to be. And they like to go out with their friends, and I have to be able to accommodate that if I want to attract the workers. So We have a unique situation in this regional economy right now where, DC and parts of Northern Virginia have become so dynamic, for that workforce. I think we can compete, but we have to kind of clear the path and support that. I think places like Silver Spring, Bethesda up and down 355 will ultimately become, even better. Two years ago, we created something called the Nighttime Economy Task Force, and that was to begin identifying some of these issues that were holding us back or where we need to make changes. For example, liquor ratios. Our restaurants have said it's really hard for them to know if they're breaking the law, when they are serving drinks, because they have to sell a certain amount of the revenues have to come from food, and that amount is, not really realistic. And so then they have trouble getting financing because the banks aren't sure if their business model is legal, things like that. So we changed some of those liquor ratios. We're working on liquor reform right now. Council has created a committee that I'm chairing focused on liquor control. It's not well understood, but if you are a restaurant or a store in this county, you have to buy just about every drop of alcohol from the county government. And the county government runs a liquor warehouse, sort of like we run the library system, and we run a bus system. We run a liquor warehouse, and that's where all the beer and wine and spirits are handled. And I think that was probably okay, 100 years ago, maybe 50 years ago, when we were a smaller county, and most people thought that Coors was an import, but 'cause it's from Colorado. But times have changed, and the new market environment depends on consumer choice, and people want to go into a restaurant and they want to see a different list of 50 beverages from the last time they were there. And so if you're a restaurant and you want to market to that type of consumer, you have to deal with a government bureaucracy that isn't able to provide you with those kind of options and really struggles in that environment. And then it becomes difficult for the restaurant to offer the same kind of opportunities that restaurants in other parts of the region can offer. And so what might not have been a problem in the past, I think has become a real problem. And if we want to have successful urban nodes, that's about restaurants. I mean, I think if we all stop and think about it, a person's ability to go to a restaurant and have some fun with their family or friends is really essential to quality of life, and it's essential to your vibrant urban areas. So we're trying to look at how to kind of help those businesses succeed. And one of the things we need to do is just get out of the way of the business and its product that it needs to sell to its consumers. So we're working on that, and I think we're going to make some progress on that this year. Another focus we're doing is called placemaking, and we've got a series that we've convened with the planning department to just focus in on some of our special areas, your Silver Springs, Wheatons, Bethesdas, Germantowns, and identify, how can our creative planners come up with ways to make this a better place to live, to walk, to create that environment where people want to be. So those are some of the major areas that I'm working on, and I think there's so much more that the county needs to do. I think we're, really at the beginning of a really exciting time, but I would say I'm very optimistic about where this county is going and what the future holds. We have a lot of assets to work with. We have one of the most highly educated workforces you'll find anywhere in the world. We have a very strong, stable employment base with our federal labs, and to have institutions like FDA, NIST, HHS, the National Cancer Institute, that maybe aren't as growing as fast as they once were, but they're not really shrinking either. So, we're in a comfortable place with a very highly educated, highly skilled workforce. At the same time, because they're not growing as fast, we have to figure out how to leverage those, how to spin opportunities out of those. The federal government is sort of making progress in that area, but the county government has to own that. We have to be really deliberate about how can we take advantage of the presence of, all of these institutions and all of these workers, to create opportunities in the future. We have great transportation infrastructure, as difficult as it is sometimes to, travel along certain corridors. At the same time, we do have, large programs like Metro, Ride-On. We do have assets that I think are promising, and we're trying to build more. The Purple Line, the Quarter Cities Transitway, Bus Rapid Transit. We have, our wonderful neighborhoods that are some of the most attractive places to live that you'll find really in the world. These are all assets that will support our continuing vitality. But again, the challenge is for us to figure out how to compete in the new environment and get those young companies, those new companies, going and prospering. So with that, I'd like to open the discussion up for questions and ask you to introduce yourself and then if you want to make a statement or ask a question or whatever, we'll continue with that. So thank you very much. Yes, please. And if to remind, please come to the microphone in front and share your name and thank you. Lori, you're first.
Yeah, I am. Thank you so much, Councilman. Lori Rodich, president of the Bebo Group. And what I was sort of hearing, and I know I'm going to sound like I'm 190 years old, is that the way to make our economy work is to get more drunk young people in the streets.
That's not the. That's not what I'm trying to say.
Okay, but freeing up liquor and getting more restaurants and it just didn't sound. I didn't connect the dots. I didn't see where companies really are going to grow and the economy is going to be better for all of the sectors.
Sure. Well, the point that I'm trying to make is that we're competing to be the place where the companies want to locate. And the companies want to locate where the workers are. And the workers of the companies that are going to be driving the change in the future are in, technology, research. A lot of those companies, that's not the whole width of our base. I think we're pretty strong in biotech. But when it comes to particularly technology, those companies want to be where the workers are, and the workers want to be where they have the quality of life that they're seeking. And so in order to provide that quality of life, we need to have strong, districts that have great restaurants and great places to go out. So the connection with the liquor policy is how successful will a restaurant be in an environment where they have to deal with a government bureaucracy to sell, their products. And I think if we can reform that, we will help the restaurants be more successful. So it all connects to quality of life and being able to offer not only the rural and suburban, but also the urban quality of life, because the whole country, is gravitating the dynamism is gravitating towards urban centers in this country. That's where companies are going. And so we have to be able to compete for that in our own way. We're never going to be DC or, Baltimore, but we're going to be our own unique version. And if we're not able to offer that, then we're going to be missing opportunities. So that is the connection. It's an economic development strategy based on quality of life, being able to offer the quality of life that the workforce wants so that the companies will want to be here as well. And again, the vibrancy or the strength of your restaurant sector is closely tied to the quality of life in your community. Okay.
Good morning. I'm Kathy Kitts of New Growth Center for Brain Training and Education. And one thing I just wanted to say off the top regarding the liquor situation, a funny story is that I used to do wine tastings with my husband, and we were employed by a private individual. But when we got to the county, I had to do wine tastings dry.
What does that mean?
Yeah, we couldn't open the bottle in the county liquor stores, so it was using a lot of imagination. So that might be one thing you touch upon, because nobody wants to buy a wine without first tasting it if it's being touted anyway.
As a tasting, yes, that's interesting.
The one thing I'm always interested in is the education system.
Yeah.
I didn't hear anything about education. I know you didn't put that on your top 3, but especially early education, I don't think right now we're really geared up to, say, 2030 or even 2020 with our early education.
Yeah.
I mean, with my background, I know that those are really precious years. We should be having, 2, 3, 4 foreign languages being, given to these infants and toddlers and preschoolers. I mean, they soak it up and they will have a native accent and they'll be ready for the world. Because really, we don't know what's in the future. We don't know if biotech's going to take over or maybe just pencil and pen.
Right.
Those skills. I mean, we lack those skills right now. In the colleges, they have to remediate most people. They don't even have the math skills. So in particular, that math curriculum, are we doing anything to make it more forward thinking? Because right now, and I'm a tough judge of the math curriculum, but Montgomery County is not up to snuff on their math curriculum.
Okay, several issues there, but on the issue of early care and early education, I do think that's one of the great missing pieces in our educational system and really in our social services. And I think the county and local government generally has said that K through 12 is something that is the responsibility of government, and community college and college is something that is the responsibility of government. But until you get into K, you're on your own. And I don't think that's appropriate. I think that is doesn't serve our interests as a community at all. This week I introduced legislation to create a county office on child care, early care, and education. And the purpose of that is to, first of all, begin to, generate support for the idea that this is an area where the status of the services is something the government must be concerned about, and to conduct research about what the service web for early care is in the county, and then to develop a strategic plan to get ultimately towards universal early care, but figuring out the model, the blend of public and private, that will ultimately yield the success. So I think that early care is really key for our ability to achieve our goals in education and generally. I think that I didn't really touch too much on what I didn't describe the 5 things that I think are the most important 5 things to supporting our economic growth. I talked about 3 things that I'm working on towards that goal, and so education is the most important. I was talking about the status of our kind of knowledge workforce. Some of the initiatives that our college is doing to bring workers in to create, skilled workers in areas of economic change, I think is incredibly valuable. As far as the curriculum, I will have to pass your words along to the Board of Education, only because I don't have any input to the curriculum as a parent. I would just say that the new curriculum that the county has developed, I like it. I see you're not a fan, but I think
Not of the math.
All right, well, duly noted.
The Board of Education, by the way, they're not a bunch of mathematicians, so they may not be the best people to ask.
Okay, well, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good
My name is
morning.
Alicia McLeod. I'm from Rockville Economic Development. I'm the
Oh,
business
good.
development manager there.
Great.
Good to see you this morning and hear the great things you're talking about.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you a question specific to the small businesses in the county.
Yeah.
I know you know that they are a driving engine, and I know that there are some committees that have been put together, for instance, procurement.
Yeah.
And I wanted maybe if you could speak to a little bit about your thoughts and perspective on those committees and the things that may come out of them.
Very good. In fact, I should check the time, because at 9:30, I'm taking up several bills at the Government Operations Committee today on procurement. So we are working very hard this year, especially on procurement issues in the county. There's several things I'd say. I mean, we have heard often from small businesses in the community that it is more challenging for them to get through county procurement than it is even to get through federal procurement. And that's saying something. But, there's a tension to adding social goals to procurement. We're discussing legislation today, to give a benefit to companies that provide health care, which they should provide health care. We have, at the one hand, we have sort of added a lot of, objectives to what the companies that do business with the county should provide. At the same time, we have a problem of companies being able to qualify and to get through the process. Another big area we've looked at, and I think we're going to make some improvements this year, is on the success of minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses to get contracts. And there is a big difference between the number of firms that are out there that are essentially providing the kind of services that the county procures versus the companies that actually provide those services. There's a lot of eligible minority women-owned businesses in this region, but they are not represented in the companies that do business with the county. So we're also trying to identify how to fix that, and we've convened 2 task forces that are meeting now that are reviewing the whole procurement process, and they're going to be making recommendations on those issues as well. So I think that hopefully this year we will enact some legislation, or a lot of legislation, that will smooth things up. The county executive has proposed creating a new procurement office, that brings procurement out of the department where it is and gives it more visibility and leadership, something I support. And so I think there's a lot of change in the works, and we'll need to continue to hear from groups like yours as to whether we're succeeding.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, Councilmember. My name is Robert Brown. I'm with Capital Financial Partners. My question is kind of based on, I think you mentioned open data, and you had talked about the cables, the fiber optic cables in Montgomery County. I know there are certain parts of Northern Virginia that have open Wi-Fi spots, so if you walk down the street, like your cell phone, whoever can check the Wi-Fi. Do you guys have that here in Montgomery County? If so, are you looking to expand those capabilities?
Yeah, just a little, and I do think we need to expand, and we are looking to expand that. I know that downtown Silver Spring, for example, has outdoor Wi-Fi provided over the county's fiber, but it hasn't really become widespread, and it should, because I think we need to give people an alternative to their data plans, and if we can have a really strong Wi-Fi network, then people can use the internet much more in a much more cost-effective way. And since we have all of this fiber in the county, why wouldn't we allow people to save money and access the internet that way? There's also lots of interesting technologies that are being developed with Wi-Fi, mobile Wi-Fi networks and things like that. So there's a lot that can be done, but I think through the process of planning that we are engaged in, that we've kicked off with all of the work around broadband, I think we're going to have some new ideas on the table and move to enact them over the next year or two. And I think in several years from now, you'll see a very different, environment in this county for public Wi-Fi. Thank you.
Hi, Councilmember. My name is Erica Dickstein. My company is Spring Insight Marketing, and we do websites for small businesses.
Great.
And continuing on the discussion of the county fiber, I was really interested to hear that. You mentioned when you were talking about what great options we have for our home broadband capabilities, and I actually have to disagree. We do have great. It's so limited, and it's so limited that it makes the problems of net neutrality huge, because while we have had good legislation recently on it, we still are all captive to basically two or three providers. So I'd love to hear more about what you are considering in terms of opening up this fiber to consumers to give more choice, so that we aren't bound by those problems.
Great. So I do agree with what you say, although my intent was to say that, you know, there's not as many communities around the country that even have a choice of two, you know, kind of fiber optic speed services. So on the one hand, you know, we're better off than many communities. On the other hand, having a choice of two is not much of a choice, and it's an overall problem for consumers, whether residential or commercial, and it's very limiting. So the issue is that these companies all use public right-of-way to deliver their products, and the recent ruling on net neutrality, you know, was really important because it ensures that companies that don't have a lot of market strength, you know, can nevertheless be confident that if they develop a product that requires a lot of broadband, you know, that they'll be able to deliver it without, you know, having to charge so much that their business is not profitable. And so that's what net neutrality is about, for me particularly, is ensuring that, you know, that being able to deliver something to a consumer at a very high speed will continue to be an opportunity that, you know, new businesses can engage in. And that has lots of benefits for consumers as well, you know. But what I would like to see ultimately happen is a public alternative to all of those, you know, providers, so that, you know, the ultimate situation would be that there is fiber going into the home that is publicly owned. And then there might be fiber going to the home that's owned by companies as well, and then the consumer has the choice. The problem is it's really, really, really expensive to do that. And I don't think that, you know, the county is likely to want to fund, you know, the several $100 million or more that it would require to build fiber to the home that's, you know, publicly owned. At this time. But there are places where I think we could get going with it. So, for example, in White Oak, you know, I described my interest in making that what's called an innovation district. Part of that would be, since White Oak is sort of what, you know, it's currently undeveloped. It's land that has been used as a gravel pit. There's land that's been used as a WSSC treatment facility, you know, like a sludge treatment. So we're going to build a new community, commercial and residential, from the ground up. While we're doing that, what I've advocated is there we should build the public alternative. Allow the major companies to come in, but have a public alternative to get out to the internet at super high speeds. And then we'll have that kind of competitive, more competitive market. Some of the other things I've described about, like, for example, building codes, you know, making sure that one company can't sign an exclusive agreement to get into an apartment building, so that 500 units in that building only have one choice. Those kind of things reduce competition and, you know, reduce the quality of service ultimately that people have. So I do think we need to push forward on a variety of initiatives to create a more market competitive environment in the county, and I think that's really important. So thanks for your question. Oh, I'm not in charge of, I apologize there. We're out of time. So Kelly, would you like to take it over now? And thank you again very much for being here and your time today. Thank you.
So this concludes the formal program. I definitely thank you all for participating, both here in the studio as well as online. I hope you'll join us next month. April 16th, Thursday, April 16th, will feature Gabrielle Jackson. She's the CEO of the Millennials Solution. She's also the author of The 5 Millennial Myths. And so you definitely want to be here because she's going to talk about the different generations working together in the marketplace and how to keep millennials from quitting. Little known fact, the average millennial here in the DC area, can anyone tell me what the average span that they're on a job for here in the DC area? It's 11 months, I believe, is statistically what they're saying. So when you hire a millennial, you want to make sure that you not only invest and so into their professional development, but you want to do it in such a way where they have a desire to stay with you. So I hope you'll join us again next month. Thank you. Again, my name is Kelly Leonard, and have a great day.